Hello, welcome to the Long Term Wealth with Real Estate podcast. I'm here with Harrison Goldblatt, a friend of mine for about 10 years. I recently learned that he's been invested pretty heavily in real estate, so we thought we would invite him to be the first guest of this podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gabe, thank you so much. First of all, I'm honored that you see me as a real estate investor worthy of a podcast, especially the first episode. It's funny, in my mind, I'm a big real estate investor. I guess my taxes would say similarly as well. Obviously, we're both relatively early in our careers. So let's see. I guess about me briefly, I do identify as a stock trader. And I've been trading stocks and options full time for a couple of years now. And I also have real estate investments. And that has been my main focus for a couple of years. Out of college, I had 4 years of sales experience for a software company.
Nice. Nice. And then did you keep doing that, or did you balance both for a while and then leave? How'd you balance the W-2 income with the entrepreneurial stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So 2019 was a magical year for me, almost too magical, to the point where it kind of gave me some overconfidence, where I was making six figures in my software sales job, but I was also making about 500 a week passively trading options. And I thought, like, okay, this is it. 500 a week is not an insane amount of money, but it was enough for me to say, if I focus on this full time, maybe I could actually make a real income from it. But what I didn't realize, or what the dots that I didn't connect, was that at the end of 2018, there was a 20% stock market correction. And so most of 2019, we were just recovering from that. And so even though I made about 50% on my trading, the market was up 25. So I wasn't doing anything, it was good, but it was much more difficult to repeat than I had anticipated.
And that was 2019, or every year? Was that just 1 year, or did you notice that over a couple years?
That was 1 year. So all of 2019, I had a W-2 income and I was trading options.
After that, did you maybe did you stop doing the W-2 job, or did you stay with it?
Going into the year 2020, I said, this is the year that I'm going to become a full-time trader any way possible. And I signed up for a bunch of courses. A lot of them ended up being bullshit courses that didn't actually help very much. But COVID ended up happening a couple months later, so I felt like this is the universe kind of, for better or for worse, giving me its blessing to say, go ahead and pursue that entrepreneurship path.
Nice. Yeah, it was a really interesting time, I think. With COVID, I kind of used it as a rebirth myself. That's when I bought my first property, but I had been working on it for at least a full year, but I had been planning on it for a good 10 years since I was about 15. So it was a lot of things came together. The interest rates were historically low. I ended up purchasing my property at like 2.5%.
Oh, that's incredible.
I think the interest on that was like $400,000 over 30 years, which is, I guess, a lot. But back in the day, people were spending 8, or even just a year before 4.5.
If you really sit down and calculate the interest rates, you nearly end up paying double.
Yeah, that's right.
Any discount on that adds up.
I really cared about that. I knew that 2020 was the time. I kind of started a couple businesses. I think I started 3 during COVID.
Excellent. What were they?
Well, I started the real estate coaching company. Originally, I kind of knew that I don't want to work for my time, right? So that's kind of been the defining rule for my life. I knew very early on, when I was about 15, I did not want to work for my money. So I knew that I would probably end up in real estate. And then once I started, but I also had the entrepreneurial spirit. And so you always wonder, what am I going to do? Am I going to manufacture something and sell something? Am I going to, whatever? And so I happened to be a table tennis player, and I knew that I could coach because I'm a decent player. Nothing crazy, but I was like, I could do that, start with that.
I've seen you. It's pretty crazy, actually. You're really good.
So I started there. I was like, okay, I'll name my company West Coast Coaching Services. That way, when I decide to rebrand at some point, once I've kind of honed in on the core competencies of the business, that I can kind of really go in there. And so anyway, I did a rebrand. And that's kind of so much came together at once. It took about a year for me to figure out what the rebrand was going to be. But I realized real estate. I've been doing it and studying it for 10 years. I have over $1 million invested in it. I was like, well, running Airbnbs. I was like, really, that should be the focus of that coaching business, and to teach people kind of how I go about all that.
I think for the listener or the viewer, our relationship is interesting as well. And I felt similarly with real estate, where around 15, 16 years old, that's when you kind of start thinking about what college you want to go to and what you want to major in and what potential career that you have. I mean, if you're like 14 and under, that's so far away from thinking about. At least for me, I was basically just playing video games until I got a driver's license. I remember we took the bus together.
That's right.
To and from high school, Taft High School. But riding the bus was terrible. I mean, I didn't like it. I don't know about you.
I always looked at it like I kept meeting interesting people. I guess that was the only thing.
I know that we met there. Around that age, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I kind of started getting the wheels spinning as well. And I dragged my dad to a 3-day real estate seminar when I was about 16 or 17 years old. But I couldn't really do anything about it because I didn't have any resources other than just get educated. And then we kind of reconnected basically through social media.
Yeah, things took off kind of in a wild direction. So I think I joined the military not long after we met. So when I was about 17 years old, I started that process. And I became an analyst for the military around the age of 18. And I got accepted to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And so I kind of took a year off while I did a bunch of different training with the military. Then I knew that I wanted to be an officer. So that was really my main focus back then, was just, okay, I knew that in order to be in real estate, I had to make money. So I made a very long-term plan to essentially make about $200,000. That's what I wanted to make a year, was $200,000. Originally, the goal was 80. And then, I hit that.
You wanted to make 200 annually?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
To income that I would then use to sort of fund different entrepreneurial efforts and real estate. And so when I was 19, I was just about to go to college. I went to college after I left the training for the military. And then I started my officer training with the military. And then I started looking into what I might want to do as far as my business outside of my work. Once I created a coaching company for fitness, where I created a software application that would have helped people track. Well, I guess what it really would have done is let me coach people virtually, right? So I guess it was a bit before its time.
Wait, so are you a coder?
No, I would have just hired a coder, just hire a software engineer to build the software and then someone to maintain it. I worked with a nutritionist to develop my own specialized like breakfast bars, lunch bars.
That actually sounds very much like Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Workweek. He developed like a nutritional pill, and that was one of his first startups. Did that have any inspiration, or are you familiar with that? Yeah,
I did everything by myself. Never heard. Yeah, I just thought of what am I good at? Very wealthy, very successful people talk about that. Focus on your strengths. For me, it was just, when you think about what you're going to do, it's kind of like that. You just wonder, what are my strengths? And then you kind of focus on those naturally. I think you always bet on your strengths normally, and then you just go down that way. So I knew I was a coach. I knew I was physically fit. I was in the military by that, for at least 5 years by then. So I was like, I can teach somebody how to get fit. I can do that. So let me focus.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I chose not to do that, but that taught me so much. It taught me how to work with software engineers. It taught me a little bit about how the FDA process works, just in time delivery, right? Versus like drop shipping with Amazon or any. So I looked into all these different ways to deliver product, and then how to deal with lawyers and write documents and contracts, and how to develop business organizations and structures. And I did that multiple times, but never actually started the business. And then all that led up to when I ended up actually starting my coaching company.
Got it. Okay.
And I started the coaching company, and I was coaching table tennis. I'm the head coach for UCLA's team.
Oh, nice. Are you currently the head coach for UCLA's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, their table tennis team. And then I decided to take myself away from there, and and now the focus, as you can see, is on real estate for that company. And then I own a production company, and then the real estate, and then I'm also an actor. So
amazing, cool. Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff on TikTok. If you're listening, check out Gabe. I don't know what's your tag.
So for my personal, it's I am Gabriel Griffin, and then for my company, it's WCCS LA, and everything's the same, whether it's Twitter, TikTok, or YouTube. They're all exactly the same, except for Twitter. My personal is I am Gabe Griffin because of their character requirement.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, great. Obviously, you're doing a lot. The nutrition stuff, the tennis stuff, the real estate stuff, the acting stuff. Wow, you're. I mean, it's impressive to have so many skills.
Maybe, I don't know.
Or maybe that's just 4 skills, and you like can't cook, you can't tie your shoes, you can't ride a bike.
Right, exactly. It's not like I have so many. Exactly. I just have 4, and I just go after those. Exactly. That's yeah, exactly right. But how about yourself? One of the things I was wondering about for you as well was like, what industries have you been a part of? Like, I know that you're big into the stock market, but then also on the real estate side, what are some of the things you're doing that help each other, or are they just 2 separate industries for you that you manage separately?
I had a very similar outlook early on, which was I don't want to trade my time for money, because time is fixed, right? We're on this earth for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long it is, but we know that we really can't extend it very much, right? So if you're fixed to your income by time, that means the only way to make more money is by working more hours and giving up less of your personal freedom. I just don't like living that way. Even if it was something that I enjoyed, I want to see like a scalable growth, right? So I'm okay with doing sales. I kind of liked doing sales, but I wanted a way to create scalable growth. I think from a very early age, my goal was, or at least in the longer term, you kind of think like, okay, you work to save so that you can invest so that you can retire. And I was thinking like, well, that's just so many steps. Why don't I just worry about the investing part? Rich Dad, Poor Dad was definitely a pretty big inspiration to kind of get my butt moving in that direction. So where my W-2 income came from was software sales at Oracle. So literally calling people, emailing people, setting up meetings and presentations to look at our databases and our CRM and our finance software. But going into the workforce, I was thinking like, I heard some ballpark number that you should have $200 in cash flow per unit. So I was thinking, okay, well, I need to find a way to buy a house every year. And so that by the time I'm in my 30s, then I can have something to at least pay the bare necessities. And when I accepted my very first job out of college, I basically said, no matter what, I'm going to find a way to funnel that income into buying a home. So I stayed at my parents' house for a year and saved up my income. I was fortunate enough to have a good job that had a pretty decent income. I saved almost all of it by staying with my parents, and my parents, I'm very grateful. My parents were willing to match what I saved, and that was my first down payment.
Oh, great. Well, that's awesome. And that was a single family home?
It was a townhome, 3-bed, 3-bath.
Nice. Did you do Airbnb, or did you just keep it to yourself?
Basically, right away, the first 2 months or so, if I wrote a book, I'd have a chapter of it just called Painting, where I just painted the whole place. And I did basically rent out the other bedrooms right away.
Nice. That's smart. Yeah. I did that with a townhouse when I was a little younger as well, but that was back in Washington, D.C. Yeah. But then I think originally my goal was just to buy a triplex here and then in Los Angeles, because I knew Los Angeles could really command very high rents. That was like my main focus. A lot of people are afraid about the dollar amount where, yes, sure, it might cost $1 million, but in today's, at least right now, or within the last year or so, $1 million house, depending on some factors, really was maybe $3,800, $3,900 in the mortgage. So I was like, most people in California are paying almost that anyway, for an apartment, So I was like, buying a house now, or a townhouse, or like units, especially units, I feel like are the best option for me personally, and I feel like I've made a good amount of money off of it, because when you take into account, every single time you pay your mortgage, you're receiving the principal as equity in the investment. Then if you have the bedrooms, if you're renting out bedrooms, or if you're renting out the units, you have that cash flow, and then the appreciation on the property. So, and if you buy in a desirable area, then that's not a problem. So you meet people randomly sometimes. I met a guy yesterday. I was just walking my dog, and I think he asked me if I rent or own, which most people don't ask. And I was like, well, I own. And then I ended up telling him, I have like a 10-bedroom duplex here in LA. And he was like, 10 bedrooms? And he had to stop. He was like, 10 bedrooms? Not, well, I have a 3-bedroom over there. You mean like 3 and 3? And I'm like, no, it's like 5 and 5, But the idea is that I just want to maximize. I run it like a business. I want to maximize the income on those rooms. And with Los Angeles being such a, everybody wants a home. I get thousands of requests, a month.
Yeah, so a lot of things, I think something that scares people away from investing in real estate is they see the fluctuations, especially if you're our age, you might remember the 2008 financial crisis. But if you zoom out in history, that was like a very rare, once in a lifetime sort of real estate market crash. And on top of the fluctuation in real estate, the rental market is actually very stable.
Yeah, it is. It went up.
It only goes up or it stalls, and that's really all it does.
I was living in Santa Monica back then, and I think we were paying $1,800 for it was a 2-bedroom, like 1 bath. And when I moved back to Los Angeles, it was that same apartment area, at least, is like $3,200 now.
Wow. Yeah,
that was about maybe 10 years.
Yeah, so doubling would have been 3,600. So it nearly, it went up more than 50%. It went up like 75 maybe.
Yeah, and a lot of people back then were making pretty risky decisions, I think. One thing I always wanted to make sure is that I never had more homes than I could afford, right? Like a lot of people, they can't carry the mortgage on all the homes they own. And they are dependent on receiving the rents. And so this is a perfect example. I knew that it takes 50% of my income to cover like everything I need to do if I didn't receive any rents. And I made it like that on purpose.
So basically, at all times, your salary could cover the obligations if you have to. So your tenants
Yeah, at a minimum, right? I have to like eat out less, and I can't do the fancy dinners, but I planned for that at the beginning. I said to myself, I never want to be in their situation. In fact, I used it as a bit of a learning lesson, because a lot of people, they might have had 4 or 5 buildings and they were trying to cover $15,000 with no rents, or in their case, the property values.
So did you have any tenants during COVID that ended up moving out or not being able to afford rent?
Most people did. In fact, I planned for that as well. It's so funny. Yeah, because my guess was, everybody was saying that COVID was only going to last, at that time, they were like 2 months, 3 months. And I was like, this is going to be 2 years. Everybody knows if they work in the sciences, it takes like 2 years to develop a vaccine. So I kind of planned, because I bought my house in July 2020, I planned that it would take 2 years, 2 years to actually get to an area where everybody starts being able to live again normally. In the meantime, I guessed that either renters would not leave at all, or they would leave. And if they did stay, but they lost their job, then they wouldn't get paid and things like that. So I expected there to be a lot of financial issues, and that did come to pass. There were months where I was completely empty. There were months where I was completely full. But I focused my business on young people. Young people, when they can't afford their house, they go home. Older people, they stay, right? They don't have any. They can't go to their dad or mom's house, but younger people do. So I kind of guessed if I focus my business on the younger market, when they can't pay, they'll just leave. And yeah, now I don't have anybody, but I'm also not losing money in space.
So do you think it's better to have a vacancy than a squatter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Because you can fill a vacancy, but a squatter, you gotta.
At least with the vacancy, you can do Airbnb, right? I mean, Airbnb has more fees. It's very short term, typically, but I mean, I do Airbnb on the site. So my building is 10 bedrooms, and on the first 5, I do Airbnb. Every room is booked for the next 3 months. On the back, I do long-term rentals, and only 30% of the guys are paying. I think there's like there's a couple people there who haven't been able to pay for a while. So
Oh, wow.
I'll never go through that with my Airbnb, but after all their fees and everything, it's only like seven.
They got to pay just to book their Airbnb.
That's right. In fact, they get charged immediately if they're not coming. I think it works like this. If they're not coming for even a month, right? And it's going to cost $2,000 or whatever. They get charged that like right then.
That's nice. So I guess, I think a common thing that most listeners might be curious about is how did you get the down payment for your first property? Because I think the most important thing is just getting in.
That's right. Get the first one, right? You look at is it Amazon? They said it took so many years for him to make the first trillion, and then he made the second in a year. Right? It's the first one. Everybody talks about that.
Wow. It's that first trillion. I probably went from like 100K, after a couple years of working, and then 200K came shortly after.
I was pushing hard. In fact, I'll tell you how I did it. So I was still in college when I got my job because I realized I kind of always take time to look at my financial picture. And I was like, okay, college is pretty expensive and I'm probably going to run out of money in a year. So I started sending my resume out to say, okay, what type of, would they hire me now? Right. I graduate in a year. Will they hire me now? And they did. Somebody offered me $63,000, and then I was working for the military. And my reserve check is like, at the time, it was like $6,000, $7,000. So I was pretty decent income.
Wait, so what military and college, were you doing them both at the same time?
Yeah. In fact, it got more complicated once I started working because then I was doing all of that at the same time. I was in the military, officer candidate school, college, and then working full time at that time.
Oh, wow. So you clearly have a very strong work ethic as well.
Maybe. I don't know. I think at the time I just wanted to, when you want to make $1 million, I think you're going to work hard. That's the idea. And so that's what happened is I worked really hard, and then I left that job to make 80. I left that job to make 100. I left that job to make 120. I left that job to make 150.
That's amazing. How long were you at each role?
Depends. Maybe a year each.
So you actually leaving the job allowed you to get that higher pay scale. Because I know at my job, it was like, if you stayed at the company, your salary would be raised by pennies. But if you left and came back, they'd give you a much higher pay.
That's true. How I do it is I never leave without a job, right? So in other words, I not as much anymore because my feelers aren't out. I'm actually quite happy with the status of my life right now and my work-life balance and stuff. But before, I had offers coming in weekly. Like I kept my feelers out constantly. And so someone would say, hey, we're offering, let's just say, I don't know, $55 an hour when I was like 20. And I was making 45. I'd be like, hey, that would be maybe enough to get me or more, and then I would go to them, and then I never left unless, yeah. So that's kind of how I did it. You also mentioned that you have a company. I remember we talked about that. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm interested in that. Like, because you went the W-2 route, but then you eventually, like you said, you said 2019 was kind of the year, 2020 was the year that you decided I'm going to move forward as well, right?
Right. Now, if I stuck with the W-2, there's no doubt that I would have been able to accumulate more real estate, right? So I have two homes right now. So my goal leaving was I want to do whatever it takes to become an individual stock trader. You don't have to deal with bosses. You don't really have to deal with clients. But the truth is, if you have a skill, people will pay to learn it from you, like as you know with your coaching business. So I kind of it was like I would study trading strategies all day, and then as a break, I literally looked at it as a hobby. I would set up YouTube videos and have a website, and I would get people, maybe a couple people a month, maybe one person a month would pay me $500, and I'd teach them how to do what I was doing. But I did make an LLC because my plan is to ultimately just continue to work for myself. The-backtesters.com is the company that I'm running now. And it's all under an LLC, All Day Premiums LLC. So any business, any income I get goes through that one LLC. And basically, we have a Discord community. We give daily trade alerts. And right now, we're getting about 2 new members a week. And it's $150 a month. But these trades are actually pretty good. So I opened one yesterday that I closed today. It made 20%. I opened one on Monday. I closed it on Wednesday. That made 30%. And they're not all winners. So on Friday I opened a trade, and today I closed it for a 40% loss. But the winners far outweigh the losers. So people that sign up for this service, they're really getting a lot of value.
Good. That's amazing. We met briefly, and it's really incredible. Like I remember when I saw you at in Santa Monica at the Miramar Hotel. Right, we passed. I think I don't know if I guess we passed each other or I passed you. I was like Harrison, and then we started talking, and I don't know why I was there, but it's a great place, and and we talked really quickly. You showed me your spreadsheet, and I saw that you really only had 2 bad months or bad trades. I don't know if they were separated by trades or month, but out of that long list, you kept the pretty accurate records. There was really only two or so that you were like, yeah. But then what did I ask you? As any business person should ask, what did you learn from those? Right? What did you learn from those two, and did you use it in your future trades? And then we talked a little bit about that. And I knew at that time that you and I would probably speak again about something, because I could tell you and I are on similar paths.
Right. So I kind of want to mention, I think this would be useful for the listener. I think we kind of stayed in touch because I saw you posting online that you were buying buildings. And I'm like, this guy's the same age as me. He's doing big things, right? And so whenever I see anyone achieving success, I want to compliment them, right? I want to, give 2 thumbs up. First of all, good job, right? It's not easy. Second of all, I kind of selfishly want that for myself.
There we go. Let's talk about it. Let's see what happened. Exactly. In fact, that's something I wanted to ask you is, so your father, right? Your father, you said, all right, I want to go to this real estate. It was a convention.
It's a Rich Dad Poor Dad 3-day seminar. I think we paid like $100 to go or $200, and obviously the goal of the seminar is to pay for one-on-one coaching. That's like $20,000 or something. But at the seminar, we had a teacher that just talked about all the different ways that you could invest in real estate and how beneficial it was.
But you already had the energy to go there. What started that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I was in high school, about 16 or 17 years old, I had a teacher that was talking about how there's the working class and there's the elites. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to have to work forever. Like, how do I get into the elite class, right? So just some studying and some kind of just realizations around me, talking to people that had money. Real estate just seemed like the obvious thing to get into in some shape or form.
That's great. For me, I was very lucky in that most of the things I've done are by myself, really. So I don't get a lot of help, which is a good and a bad thing. You have to be extremely creative, but I definitely wish I had more, right? But anyway, the help I got when I was 15 was that my mom was dating this guy who I think he worked in software, but he was able to buy a triplex in Venice. And that was really amazing to me because that cost him like $1 million. And, I was this 15-year-old kid, and and he took us there, and he was like, all right, this is my building. I'm going to live in that one up there, and I'm going to rent these two out. And then I don't pay any money to live. And I said to myself, that sounds great. Let's make that the base goal, right? And everything kind of went from there. And then I was kind of lucky to meet this special forces like ex-ranger. He was he's in his early mid 50s by the time I met him, and he had become the company's senior investment person. He actually was affected by the 2008 crisis. That's when he lost that job, but he was so good, the company kept him around and gave him a different job because, again, he was so good. And I learned a lot from him. He would just run spreadsheets all day in the background, and sometimes he'd get on the phone and call his wife. And his wife was making $150,000 on her own and had her own spreadsheet. He had 4 or 5 properties, and he had his method, and I learned from it and added it to my toolbox. And so that's kind of a part of this. I want to bring people on like yourself who have a toolbox of tricks. I certainly have mine, and talk about them. And so that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Is that's the beginning of it, and then you ended up realizing it. And so now you have 2 properties, and they are what type? What's the property type?
So both properties are townhomes. So I share a wall. There's an HOA, which means I don't have to worry about the outside, which to me is very nice. I don't have to mow any lawns. I don't have to paint anything outside. They're both meant for single families. So I guess you could say my investment method is I have to live in a place, right? And I just want to do it in a way that makes sense. And the people often see buying a home as, oh, now you're going to be anchored somewhere because of whatever reason. But that it's made up, honestly, because you could just as easily move, rent it out, hire a management company, and then never think about it again except for the rental income that it brings you. And I don't mean never, right? That's an exaggeration.
Sure, of course. Once a year, maybe fly in, check on it. But yeah, it's not. It's a low maintenance. It can be, depending on how you set it up, a low maintenance thing. It's funny you mentioned that though. I really always considered. I really always considered buying a house as something that did bind me more to a place than renting. I absolutely agree. You can always put a property manager in charge of it and just check on it and make sure they're doing their thing. But yeah, I that's actually a part of why I didn't. I could have bought a house years ago. I could have bought a townhouse or something different years ago, but I didn't because one of the principles that I really try to follow is I want to live. I want to invest where I want to be.
Yes. Yeah, we've talked about that as well. Similar concept for sure.
And for me, I always knew since the moment I got off the plane when I was 12 years old, I always knew I wanted to be in Los Angeles. I had lived in a lot of places. I moved a lot. My mother, she's an actress, and so she was studying here and there, and we would live with her, my sister and I. That was the place I fell in love with. And so when I joined the military and was all over the country,
it's slightly different when you're born in Los Angeles.
I know it is, and I always remember friends saying, "Yeah, when you're born here," I'm like, "You get tired of this beauty? All right."
more for you.
Yeah, my mother, she moved us all around, and then but when I got here, I knew I wanted to be here. So when I joined the military, I knew that I shouldn't buy in the different places they put me, or that I had to be. And when I got here, pretty much immediately when I got here, I started the process of purchasing real estate.
So I want to bring something up. It's on a similar note, and I mentioned you had a very good work ethic, clearly based on your story. And you said, well, when you want to make $1 million, it just kind of happens, right? So the cool thing about that statement, and I'm going to tie it back in, is that you're excited about the goal. You're excited about making that money, so you're going to do what it takes, right? In a similar concept, you're excited about living in LA and living near where you invest. So due to that personal excitement, you're much more motivated to find a way to make it work. So, you're having dreams at night about how to make it work without even realizing it, because it's something that you're personally excited about. And so I feel similarly. Like when I buy a place, I want to actually live there, or I want to plan on living there, so that if I deal with it, it's like, oh well, this is my home.
I think about it a little differently, only because my goal is to have several properties. So what I think about is who are my target customers and where do they want to live, and then I buy that. Right? I try to do a mixture between how do I want to make my money, and then who do I want my customers to be? And then I kind of draw a circle around it, and then I go after it.
Yeah. So it's the same idea, or it's a similar idea. So I was coming across this recently, where my house in LA has appreciated tremendously in value, and that's just so much equity sitting in one place.
What's the average year-over-year appreciation?
I bought it for $345, and now it's worth $540, and I bought it in 2017, so...
It sounds like it's like at least double national average.
Yeah, it did really well. I got a great deal on it when I got in as well. Not like a miracle of a deal, but I definitely knew that I wanted it because it was a good enough deal. But I don't know, should we do the math? I mean...
Let's do the math.
200K divided by 5 years. Okay, so 200 divided by 5 years is 40 divided by 345. So that's like 12% a year almost.
That's wow, that's great. The thing about the COVID pandemic is I can't tell, I'm getting 15% a year. I can't tell if that's inflation or if it's actual true property appreciation because I chose a good location, which I did. I'm next to the SoFi Stadium.
Well, I mean, as long as we don't go backwards, does it really?
I'm worried that that the interest rate the dropping interest rate was a part of the increase in property value, right? That as interest rates go up, that perhaps we might see a slowdown in the appreciation. I would bet personally that might happen. I really think that's what I'm worried about. I'm not super worried because I don't care. I created an investment vehicle that pulls, I think it's like 100% a month.
What? Oh, okay. What is that? What is that? Is that an Airbnb? Like, are you renting out an RV on Airbnb?
So how I did it, there's some basic principles in here. It's I go by the 1% rule. So my house cost $1 million, a little bit more. I mean, a little bit less actually, but about the 965. But let's say it's $1 million, and then I made every rentable space about $1,000, a little more than $1,000. And the 1% rule is a real estate technique that's used to ensure that your investment will most likely make money over a 20 or 25-year period.
Right. So if I think it's your monthly rental income should be 1% of your purchase price or something, right?
And of course, because I and a good investor will increase their rent in accordance with inflation and the market, and because I have a fixed interest rate, I guess the best way to look at it is it gets cheaper for me over time to own this house.
Oh yeah, definitely.
$5,000 is worth less and less money over time. But anyway, even in the first year, you're talking, $5,000 mortgage, well, $3,000 mortgage, $1,200 property tax. So let's just say $5,000 worth of payment, insurance, taxes, everything, and then I make 10 or 11. So it's like that's where that comes from. And then you have to add in the appreciation. That's cash. Then add in the appreciation. Then add in the principal payment, and now you're at like over 100%.
Right. Okay. So what's really cool is you asked, and what a lot of people ask is, what was my appreciation on the property? But I didn't buy 100% of the property. I put a down payment. So the return on the down payment is like, gosh, in the hundreds of percentages, like, I don't know, 200-300%.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I keep it. Yeah, I don't even go there.
Yeah, no reason. I mean, people start looking at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, I just keep it simple. That's exactly right. I like how you put that. Yeah, because someone who's listening would have caught that, right? I didn't say it, but that's good. Yeah. But I'm curious. So you run Airbnbs, right?
No. So my home in Los Angeles is rented out to 3 separate parties. They're adults. They each have their own bedroom. They each have their own bathroom, and they're actually on month to month. And then my current living arrangement, I live with my best friend and business partner, and so he and his girlfriend basically live on the first floor. I live on the second floor, and it covers my mortgage, so I'm happy, right? So I have one cash flowing property in LA, and I live here in Las Vegas very cheaply, and I have 4 tenants in total.
One thing I wanted to talk about was creativity. Also, by the way, I think I have it gets a lot, man, but I have like 7 or 8 right now. That has its own difficulties, which we can talk about later maybe. But anyway, creativity, right, is what I wanted to talk about. Whether you're like me and I didn't have anyone helping me at all, but it doesn't really matter because you can scale by your objectives. So if you want to have $1 million, you need to determine what it takes to get it. If I were able to get $50,000 from my parents, or if I was able to win the lottery, doesn't matter. The idea, you know what I'm saying? Like all that changes is really, I guess, your buying power in accordance with your vision, right? Like, what do you want and what are you able to do? But even for you receive some help from your parents, but that doesn't mean everything's easy now. Right? You still have to be creative.
It wasn't like my parents said, "We'll give you a bunch of money and go have fun." It was like me talking to my parents for years and years and years, saying, "This is a good idea. If I don't do this, it's a bad idea. I'll pay you back." I have paid them back, right? And so it's not like parents were guiding me at all. They actually had almost no experience in investing in real estate other than the home that they lived in.
Have you helped them at all? Like, did you talk to them about investing in real estate, or did they leave it to you?
They have left it to me. They've had their own inheritance that they're trying to figure out what they want to do with now, and some of it did come in the form of real estate. I honestly wish they did leave it up to me a little bit more, but that's kind of their life and their obligations. There was a point I was trying to make. So my house in LA appreciated quite a bit, and right now I'm thinking like the obvious thing to do would be to either sell it or refinance it and to scale up and get more real estate.
Scale up. Yeah, scale up.
So I've been looking at properties in Las Vegas, and something that comes to mind is like get more units, look for a fourplex, look for a triplex. But as I've been looking, I've been realizing that I just like the floorplexes that are available. They're not in a location that I'd want to live in. They're not in they don't look pretty, which I don't know. I want to appreciate the place that I live in. And I realized in my current process, I'm much more excited to find just like another condo or townhome similar to what I'm in now, just in a location that I'm more excited about. So it might not be the best real estate investment in the world, what my next move is, but it will be a good one and I will be excited about it. So therefore it's very likely to happen.
That's interesting. I agree with you 100%, but I took a different view on that. I invested in a place I don't want to live, but is, in my opinion, one of the best investments in the world. So I really had to balance that, which wasn't easy because this area is what people would call up and coming.
Mm-hmm. What area is it, by the way?
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is like South LA, so it's like right south of USC.
Oh my good! Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Anyone hearing that is like, oof.
Good for you.
Right, but the property it's brand new. Custom build. It's kind of a unique space.
Is that where you are right now?
Yeah, I live here. I'm buying another one in April. So yeah, these are unique properties, and they make it's a lot of money. They make a good amount of money. So and then they appreciate so well. So they're appreciating at like 15% a year. Of course, that's hard to calculate because of some of the effects of COVID and some changes. But yeah, I'm happy with it.
Well, so my perspective would be different. So obviously, I'm a less aggressive real estate investor, but I'm very aggressive in the stock market. And so I'm like, okay, let me make money from the stocks and then live in a way that it makes sense. And over time, right? So my personal goals will change, right?
What's your personal goal? What's your end state? I'll tell you mine after. At the culmination of these actions that you've been taking in these younger years, right? When we are 50, 30.
I guess what I'm trying to take the shortest path to is if I could just go to my computer, click a few buttons a day for my trades, alert them to 1,000 subscribers that are each paying me $150 a month, then I would make millions a year, and I could spend my time skiing, playing sports, hanging out with my girlfriend, traveling, and I see that path happening through the stock market. However, the stock market, like any investment, there's no guarantee. So I might have a strategy that works really well now, and it might not only may it stop working, but I can't guarantee that future generations, like my kids, will be able to have any understanding of what I do now, right? Whereas it's very intuitive. If you have a house that you can physically live in, that has value. You can hire, there's a million management companies that you can hire to take care of that investment. I cannot hire someone to take care of my stock trading.
No, it's so hard teaching people how to, I can't believe we're about to talk about this, but yeah, finding people to replace you, finding people who can do what you do. I have spent a lot of money this year and last year trying to find someone who can just do 30 to 50% of what I do, so I don't have to do it and can focus on the things I love, spending time with my girlfriend, traveling, all that other stuff. It's so hard. But anyway, you were saying
there's no way for me to say that one day I'm going to have a son or daughter that's going to know how to do and when to do long strangles on the market or calendar spreads, and not only that, but how to figure out how to adapt if their variation stops working. That's a very unrealistic expectation for future generations. I like to own the place that I live in. I don't want to have a landlord. So my personal needs, so right now my personal need is my girlfriend lives across town in a much better neighborhood, and I would like to live closer to there. And so I'm going to find a way to buy a place closer to there, and keep my place and rent it out to someone else. Now, a few years down the line, maybe I want like a place for me to stay that I could go skiing in, right? So maybe I'll buy a place in Mammoth or something. I'm just trying to think, or like Brian's Head, just something that I could get personal benefit from, but also have a return on my investment. And then maybe like, 10 years from now, I have a family, right? So I'm going to want to do that in a way that makes sense too. So that's kind of how I see my real estate future.
Sure, sure. And it's both the mixture between your personal business and then also setting up your future. I try to do that as well. My goal is to have, I say 4 of these because that's, by the time I accumulate 4, the first one will probably be worth like 1.5 or 2. It's like, anyway, at the end of it, it'll probably be $7 million worth of property appreciating at, hopefully, anywhere between the national average, which is like 3.5, 4.5, and the current Los Angeles climate, which is like 15% year over year for 25, 30 years. And I spend a lot of time and attention on my properties. I've managed it in house, by the way. So I have all the like the termite people and the bug people coming, and I have a cleaning company that comes by monthly basis, and I have all these things that I'm doing to ensure that this investment, like, I'm taking care of it. It's different than a stock where you wake up in the morning and you make sure that you're hitting your marks. But for with property, I wake up and I make sure there's no new scratches, and if they are, that I patch them, or whatever. But yeah, that's great to hear. And and this kind of leads into the last point that I wanted to talk about today, which is perspective on what young people, or anyone really, but this podcast, I know I didn't say it at the beginning, but it's geared towards that young person, that 15 to 20 something, whatever it is, that person who doesn't have the skills in either, whether it's your type of investing, which is both the real estate and also with the stock market, or mine, which is mainly real estate focused, and strategizing how you're going to make your deal. What can they be doing to posture themselves to be successful in their future? That really, I think, is for anybody, but if you can maybe do both for young people and then also for everybody else.
Yeah. So number one, first of all, if you're a young person and you're thinking about this stuff, then you're already on the right track. I mean, if you're 15 or 16 years old, people are talking about their crushes, they're talking about sports, they're talking about things that won't pay off in the long run. In fact, many of them are trying not to think about the future because they just kind of assume they'll be stuck at a 40-hour-a-week job that they hate. Now, I would say the biggest thing is ultimately your environment. So the people that I met a long time ago, including yourself, that I'm still in touch with, were people that generally had a growth mindset, right? Like you wanted to figure out how to grow and how to learn. I think we're actually going to have differing opinions here. If you're in a very expensive city that's very competitive, the American dream is still real if you move somewhere where you can afford real estate within the near future. And if you're not willing to physically move there, it's not crazy to buy out of state either. But you really have to line up all your ducks in a row. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but I have a cousin that he's made a bunch of money these past couple of years selling masks during the pandemic. And you could imagine that made money. And he's been talking to me for years about buying real estate. And he's gone, I'm almost going to contradict myself here, but he's gone the exact opposite approach, where he has said he'll fly anywhere in the country and he'll evaluate 100 deals so that he could find the best investment. And he'll live there. He doesn't care, right, how long it takes. But here's the thing. He's saying that, and he's not doing it. It's all just talk, right?
Oh, I see. Okay, because I'd be curious to hear what his metric is, but keep going.
Yeah, so it also like it sounds really good, but it's not attainable. So
Yeah, it's hard. I'm like, how do you do that?
right, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're really money driven,
What if the best place was like Nebraska or like North New York and you're in like Florida or LA? It's like, I don't know.
yeah, you really need some sort of so basically what I'm saying is you don't have to fight in the most competitive markets, but don't just take a stab in the dark either. Like you should have some personal interest in where you're investing. So I thought, and I still think Las Vegas is a very cool city. One of my best friends lives here. There's tons of entertainment, tons of great food. All the biggest conventions are here. It's close to LA. There's no state income tax. So it's not the best real estate investment in the world. It's a pretty good one, but it's also a city that I think is very interesting that I personally wanted to be a part of.
Nice. And I will say, I actually do agree with you. There's something I teach called scaling, which I'm sure many people teach it. But the idea is, I mean, if you can't afford, say it depends on what's important to you. If you want to live in Los Angeles and you want to figure out how to make that deal work, maybe you can't buy a townhouse, maybe you can't buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Maybe you have to look at a condo. Maybe it can't be beachfront. Maybe you have to move to some other city, or how many miles away is okay with you, right? There's all these questions that you can still get what you want. It's just not everything you want a lot of the time, and that's kind of how that goes.
By the way, I did start down that path with insisting on LA. I was like, I'm gonna live with my parents for as long as I have to afford a place in LA, right?
When I was younger, I knew that it was a time crunch, right? I was 15, but I knew I didn't have time to waste because I saw my mom and I and everybody. I saw the rents going up and up and up. I didn't have to pay anything, but I saw the rents going up and up. I knew that like when I'm ready to, I love this city, and when I'm ready to buy here or even rent here, it's going to be thousands and thousands more. And so I knew that it was really a race to the finish, even at that age. And so I still agree. I, and now I think about the people who are going to be my age 10 years from now, and I'm just like, if you don't get your ducks in a row, you're really going to not be ready. Because, I mean, a sub-$1 million property within 5 miles of the beach is going to be impossible. It's still possible now. I can't imagine that 10 years from now.
I mean, my house I live in now, it's worth about $250. I bought it 4 years ago for $170. If you like, this will be worth $1 million too by the time my kids are adults, right? I mean, so okay. So here's like a very big picture real estate concept that I think people should kind of grasp. People think about real estate as a long-term investment, and you should. But if you think about
it's everything. I'm sorry. It's everything. It's a long-term investment. It's a now investment. As long as you are making money now, right? It's everything. But keep going. Yeah.
So people will think about like, oh wow, if you just bought property in Manhattan 100 years ago, right? So today will one day be 100 years ago. You know what I mean? So if you go to like London or Paris, or if you go to any of these civilizations that have been around for like 1,000 to 2,000 years, you can't buy property in those cities. There's no way. No one is selling. They're not going to sell something that's been in their family for 500 years. Like that doesn't exist. But the United States is 200 years old or 250 years old.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. To be honest, yeah, that's interesting.
I think of something like Las Vegas, where before the Hoover Dam was built in the 30s, there was no reason for Las Vegas to ever grow. And before air conditioning was invented, you'd have to be out of your mind to live here if you survived. My grandma is older than the Hoover Dam. Today's actually her birthday. I think she's 98. I gave her a call. But so, like, literally within someone's lifetime, this city of Las Vegas has basically been born, and now it's the top 5 destinations in the world. I'm going to give you my pitch on Las Vegas. 15 of the world's largest 20 hotels are in Las Vegas.
I hear a lot of people talking about it, but I don't know what to say about it. So yeah, come on, give it to me.
Okay, so literally 15 of the world's largest 20 hotels are in Las Vegas. It's a top 5 tourist destination. About 2 million people live here, but 50 million people visit a year. Yeah, and we're building the largest dome in the world. It's going to be like a concert arena. We're also building the largest hotel. Like the largest hotel is still being built. Actually, people think like, oh wow, like all these skyscrapers must have been here forever. Like no, they've been built in our lifetime. The Golden Knights professional hockey team moved here a couple years ago. The Oakland Raiders came here a couple years ago. They're in talks to bring the Oakland Athletics here too. Las Vegas, and think about this too. The world's changed with COVID. It's now more acceptable to have a high-paying remote job.
That's pretty awesome for people. It really is. It's amazing. I never could have saw that coming. There's certain things I guessed. I'm not gonna lie. I actually guessed. I told my middle school teacher that there was gonna be a crash in 2008 with the stock market, and he told me people have been saying that for years. We both took that different ways. I took that and I'm probably right. he took that to mean it'll never happen. Anyway, you were saying.
Okay, wait, yeah. So just to close out this Las Vegas concept, 2 of the country's 10 fastest growing cities are in suburbs of Las Vegas. First of all, if you can work remotely, you might want to consider moving to a state with no income tax. But if you are a remote company where all of your employees are remote, then you're probably going to have annual or semi-annual conferences in the city that's best equipped to have conferences, which is Las Vegas, right? It's like the best city in the world to hold a conference. So I'm super bullish on Las Vegas. And the way I see my future is if I can just get another building every 2 or 3 years, whether I personally live there or I can just rent it out, like 20, 30 years from now, it'll be...
Exactly. That's how I look at it. Except I have to aggressively pursue it just because I don't spend... my target is $1 million. And that's hard. So I do have to, it's hard. But yeah, I have to be more aggressive, but it's the exact same concept. I never thought about it like that though, in terms of the age.
So I'm extremely aggressive in my stock investing for similar reasons. It's just a different vehicle. I'm passive in my real estate, but aggressive in my stock.
For me, I think that if I was going to give anything from my perspective for young people or for anybody, I guess, it's everybody thinks they have all this time. And I think only people who are older really understand that that's not true. And the sooner younger people understand it, the better for them. That's one thing I really remember thinking is like, these people keep talking about, by these people I do mean my friends and people around me, keep talking about all this time. I can do that later. Even older people, they were like, you can do that later, you can do this later. And I was like, but if you do that later, won't I be your age? And then I won't have it. I think I have to start right now. Otherwise, I won't have it then.
There's no later. You are the habits you have now. And I agree with you.
And the second thing to that is that you need to understand what it takes to reach the goal that you've set. So if you set the goal for $1 million, you need to understand what's that going to be through. So when we first started this conversation, I started talking about all those different businesses I started. Was it going to be in manufacturing? Was it going to be in coaching? Was it going to be in what was the thing going to be? You have to determine that. You can fall into it as well, but that's going to take a lot longer. Maybe 20 more years.
You could follow what?
You can fall into it, right? A lot of people fall into their million over time, over 20, 30 years.
I don't want to be 50, right? I don't ever want to be 50, especially, obviously I will after the time has passed, but who cares about having millions of dollars in your 50s? I want it sooner.
I was in Hawaii, and my girlfriend and I were the youngest people there, and everybody else was like retirement, and I was like, this is the physical manifestation of what I'm talking about. I want to be able to enjoy this right now, and work hard, right? I work pretty hard, and I want to be able to have fun and enjoy it right now, not in 10 or 15 years, but have a balanced life. And I think that some countries, that's not as much of an emphasis, but I personally decided that would be for me.
Yeah, right. I agree. There's no reason to wait until you're old to have freedom. There's something that I wanted to bring up that relates to you saying the 2008 stock market crash. And that was also obviously a real estate crash too. People that I know that are successful real estate investors, or at least I don't know, or at least they have a lot of real estate. Whether or not they're successful, who knows? But if you have a lot of properties, you could safely assume someone's doing all right. Every single person that is a successful real estate investor is always talking about getting more real estate. Now, anyone that's not a successful real estate investor, and I'm thinking I'm literally thinking about, my mom's cousin. I'm thinking about this guy on a ski lift. I'm thinking about my brother. They're always talking about, oh, you should sell that real estate. You have such a nice profit on it. Why sell at the top, right? There is no top. It keeps going up. There's no top. That's the thing that a lot of people miss.
I dated this girl that her father in the 80s bet against the US real estate market with some investment vehicle that ended up like 80% underperforming. Because he truly believed, he was like, it's not going to go up. The US economy, this and that. 1980s, in the 80s, he bet against it. I have friends who bought their houses in the Pacific Palisades in the 80s, and now they bought it for like $64,000. He could have bought his for like $80,000, and they're now 8 million, 9, 10 million, up to 30 million. So it's just, I can't understand why people keep saying that either. That's been pretty confusing for me.
They're not looking at the numbers. They're not looking at the statistics. I mean, how many real estate developers do you personally know?
Me? A lot. I mean, personally, close with 13 or 14. And that's like companies.
Companies, okay. I mean, do you think they're producing enough units to outpace demand?
No, the reason is because you can just look at it. Look how many companies there are. I never even thought about this before, but it's basic for me, I think. It's like, look how many companies there are, and look how many people are being born, right? That ticker is rolling on the left-hand side. There's more. Yeah, it's like, and then also with Los Angeles, and there's so many people moving here. It might be different for a different place, but I buy where the location's hot. That's location is a staple in real estate for a reason. I buy where people want to be, and people never stop wanting to be somewhere that's nice, luxurious in multiple ways, right? The weather.
You can't beat the weather where you're at. That's for sure.
The amenities. The people are really nice too. Looks like we're coming up on hour 15.
All right.
It's been great. Thank you so much for joining me. It was really great talking with you. I'm sure we'll talk again.
Gabe, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Our paths are going to continue to cross because we have a similar mindset and we're both investors. I might be inviting you on my podcast someday soon.
I'd love that. Thank you so much, man.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.